Hi there and welcome to video number 2 of the dartboard cabinet series. In this video, I'm going to be moving forward through the next steps of the project. As a quick recap, in video 1, we completed the drawings for the left and right sides of the cabinet, as well as the top 2 rails and all the associated joinery. This video, we're going to be looking at the shelving and then assembling the main carcass together. And then we'll work our way through in video 3, inserting the back, and video 4, drawers, and then doors. So let's get into it. On the screen, you can see the dartboard cabinet in its finished form, and we're working on the 2 bottom shelves at the moment. So this is where we left off on our drawing. And so I'm just going to remove those components that we no longer need. And a reminder that our components are sitting in our components window. If yours is missing, window, components, make sure that's ticked. And also recommend having Windows materials ticked so you can see all the different color profiles. And that gives us the opportunity to color things in as a timber texture for that final presentation of our project. So first point, we're going to go standard views. We're going to go to a top view here so we can see the green vertical line and the red horizontal line. And we're going to get onto our shelves. Now our shelves themselves are out of 90mm timber. And then in terms of the length, it's the same length as the internal components of the cabinet, which is 560 internally. But then because it sits inside a housing joint, we have to allow 9.5mm on either side. So when we add those values together, we should end up with a total length of 579. So our first rectangle, we're going to start with drawing that rectangle in, is 579 by 90mm. And there we go. Let me put that in the center for us so we can see. Now, as far as the rebate goes, there's a couple of different ways you could do this, but I'm going to go straight into turning this into a 3D piece of timber. So I'm going to put in isometric view, use my push-pull tool to push up 19mm in thickness. I'm then going to get a measurement here, which is going to be 20mm. I'm going to draw a line from point to point. Okay, so I'll just zoom in so you can see. See how my pencil will snap to the point and it will say intersection when I hover over it and I get a little X to indicate that I'm on the right spot. Click and click gives me my 2 points. Using the push-pull tool, I can now get this and I'm going to actually get the small bit and bring it back by 9.5mm. Okay, now just to recap you, that's because this section here is going to fit inside of the housing, and the housing was only 70mm long because it's a stopped housing, which means that there's 20 mils at the front of the timber that hasn't been cut out, and that's why we've got this little step in there. Okay, so this is called a stopped housing joint that we're working on. Going to rotate the timber around. I'll rotate the project around. Do the same. So I've got my measuring tool from the center, 19, oh sorry, not 19. So have it there, so 20 mils is what I'm looking for. Draw a line from intersection to intersection, push pull, 9.5mm. Back to the select tool, select the ruler mark, and there you have it. You've now got your shelf done. Highlight all, drag timber texture onto it, right click, make component, and shelf. Now the 2 shelves are the same, so we don't actually need to create 2 components of the shelves. We can just use the 1 shelf and use it 2 different times. And that's the benefit, again, of using components in your SketchUp model. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my isometric view. I'm going to zoom out and we're going to start assembling this project. So start off by saving what I've got so far, my 4 pieces and components. I'm going to get my left carcass and place it on the origin. I'm going to get a shelf. And I'm going to bring that shelf in. I'm going to get another shelf, bring that shelf in. And then I'm going to get 2 top rails and bring those 2 top rails in. Now, you might remember in the last video, I changed my top rails to be green. I'm just going to bring them back into the timber texture. And again, because we're working in components, if you edit one of the components, it will edit all versions of that same component. Let me use my move tool to move these parts to where I want them. Now you got to think about which points are going to intersect when you're moving your items around, and you need to make sure you have the right project selected. So swap to the select tool, click it. When you see the blue outline, that's the project that's selected. If I'm trying to move this one here, when the other one is selected, you'll see the top one moves. So just press escape if that happens, it'll snap back to where it is. Select tool, switch the one, move tool, and snap it into position. So I've now got my two top rails, my two shelves on my one side. I can now put my right carcass on, and I can again move by point. So I'm going to get this point here and connect to this point here, and all my pieces should now fit together. So top view, bottom view, front, back, sides, and isometric. Okay, so in terms of keyboard shortcuts, Command 1, Command 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Command 7, etc. Okay, to work our way through the different views. So you now have an assembled carcass, but without a back. So the back is the next part that we need to get in. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to create this, select it all, and I'm going to make this a component as well. This component is going to be called assembled carcass, bracket, without back. Now that's sitting in the component menu, which means I can just keep bringing any versions of those in whenever I need to. Now I'm going to show you a little trick here. As I've mentioned before, if you need to edit a component because you've made a mistake at some point or you forgot to change the textures, put the one component into your drawing, double click on it, and you'll see everything else sort of gets masked out and enables us to focus on this area here. You can then make whatever changes you need to. It could be color related changes, it could be changing dimensions or sizes. It doesn't matter what you change, okay? You can make any change you want here, and you'll see that it changes every single version of it. So just keep in mind that if you're finding your project keeps changing and it's after you've edited components, it's because your components are dynamic, they're constantly changing. So if you need to undo that, Command Z will put everything back to how you had it. Okay. So I've got my assembled carcass here, and we're now going to work on putting the backing board in. Now to do this, I'm going to go to my back view, okay, which is Command 4, Camera Tool, Standard Views, Back. You can see Command 4 there. And I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle. Now that rectangle is drawn in, and I'm going to actually offset out the rectangle this time instead of offset in, and I'm going to do that at a distance of 5 millimeters, and that's going to match the distance of my my rebate router bit that enables me to recess the back into my project. So now that I've drawn that, I can actually select my assembled carcass and delete it out, and you'll see I've got my finished back there in its final size. I'm going to delete the inside rectangle because that inside rectangle is no longer needed. And I'm going to use my push-pull tool to make this 6 millimeters in thickness because that's the size of the material that we're using for that backboard. Highlight it all. I'm going to change the backboard there. Okay, now you can pick any color you want. I might pick something a little bit different this time around. Okay, maybe something a little bit more pine related. Okay, just to show that the backs are different. Sometimes you put a veneered board in the back. Right click, make component, and I'm going to call this backboard. Now that sits up in my components. Command S to save. And at this point, I'm going to bring my assembled carcass all the way back to its origin.